Number 5. My scariest home alone stories happened during one of the first times I was left alone as a teenager. I left alone at home on a random Sunday when my parents brought my brother to some event. I was loving the freedom and everything was going great until I decided to leave my house to see my friend. My parents specifically told me not to leave the house, and I did anyways, not thinking in the moment I left my house, and I completely forgot to lock the door. I came home hours later and I had a terrible gut feeling. Something felt weird, and I noticed that cabinets were left open and stuff was scrambled around the house. I began to become very startled, but I didn't completely believe that someone was there because it was so quiet. I started shouting throughout the house to see if anybody was there. There was no answer. I started to feel better until my phone started ringing. I looked down and it was an unknown ID. Looking for attention, I answered the phone and I heard deep and heavy breathing. I started to get extremely scared. It felt straight out of a movie. I kept asking, "Who is this?" repeatedly, until the phone hung up. 2 minutes later, I got another call and I answered to the deep breathing. It sounded like an angry voice, and I started to become impatient that they weren't saying anything. They hung again and I got aggravated. I got another call from the unknown ID and the breathing started again. Out of nowhere, I heard a deep and quiet voice whisper, "I'm in the house." My heart stopped and chills ran down my spine. I've never been so scared in my life, but I acted tough, thinking it was a prank call from my friend or brother, knowing I was home alone. The caller hung up this time, and I started to hear creaking from upstairs, and suddenly I heard loud footsteps. Luckily, I heard something drop before he started sprinting downstairs. I was able to get a head start on the intruder, and I disappeared into the woods and immediately called the cops. The cops reported and found the door left wide open. They never found the person that snuck in. Number 4. A couple years back, I woke up at 3 a.m. to see someone walk past my bedroom door. I called out and I just woken up. Not thinking haze, thinking maybe my boyfriend had come over while I was sleeping. But got no response, so knew it wasn't him. Got out of bed, stupidly forgetting to take my phone or any kind of defensive item with me, and went into the front room where the light was on to be met with a random guy staring at one of the walls. I asked him who he was and got no answer. At this point, I'd actually woken up enough to realize I could really be in trouble. So ran back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone and ran outside on the phone to the police, who showed up within a few minutes. Turns out the guy was mentally ill, and to this day, neither myself or the police know how he got in. Number 3. I was about 21 or 22 and living by myself at the time, and I left my window open on a pleasant night. It was low enough to the ground that you could get in if you really tried, but the screen wasn't easy to take off, and I lived in a fairly safe neighborhood, so I didn't even think twice about it. Woke up in the middle of the night because I smelled smoke, and I reached out to turn on my lamp, and my hand hit what was very obviously a person. My brain fully woke up at that point, and I realized there was a shirtless man in my bedroom smoking a cigarette and staring at me. I remember yelling for him to get out, and I must have spooked him just as badly as he spooked me, because he leapt out my window and took off. I slammed it shut and moved a bookcase in front of it, and when I went out the next morning in the daylight, found the screen sitting against the house. Didn't sleep the rest of the night, and I haven't slept with a window more than cracked ever since. I also absolutely refused to live on the ground floor of a building. I don't know if he was planning to rob me or rape me or both, but it was absolutely terrifying and makes me wonder how many times it happened and I didn't wake up. Number 2. First time my parents left me alone when they went on vacation, I was abruptly awoken by a woman banging on my front door and screaming for help. In a fog of groggy adrenaline, I opened the door to be greeted by a bloody-nosed, topless woman. She pushed her way into my house and insisted I immediately close the door and close all the curtains. When I tried to look out the window, she urged me to stop because her crazy boyfriend was stalking her. Terrified, I complied. Once I got my wits about me, I called the police. I don't recall how long it took them to show up, but when they did, they asked if I had a shirt she could wear. No doubt they were assuming I was taking advantage of finally having a topless woman in my house. The reality was that I was too scared to even notice. The next day in the police blotter, the event was noted as a disturbance on Pequot State. In case you were wondering, I never got my shirt back. Number 1. Okay, this story isn't really a Home Alone story, but it's still a scary story from what happened at my old house. From the ages of 5 to 13, I lived in an old house on a mountain in the middle of nowhere. My dad really liked the land and had plans to do a lot with it, so we moved there as a family. I never felt settled living there. I was always scared for seemingly no reason, had lots of nightmares, and generally felt weird whenever I was in the house. We had this porch area in the front of the house, but it was more like an extra room as it had a door and wasn't open to the outside. Anyway, the door was always dead bolted, and since it had a draft, it was also sealed with some special tape or something. One night, we all awoke at the same time to the sound of a loud thud coming from downstairs. Like literally all of us got up and met in the hallway upstairs, wondering what the hell it was. We all went down together and discovered the door wide open. The tape was ripped off and the lock was just unlocked. It was terrifying. To this day, I have no explanation as to how it happened.